Politics is not for the weak of heart. Working for the Vice President of the United States of America is not for the weak of heart. Whoever is running to Politico like a little bitch because they have a problem is just doing themselves a disservice.
That's Meghan McCain weighing in on a story in Politico that has all sorts of allegations about a toxic work environment in the vice president's office. Now, the allegations, I would argue, are incredibly vague, but if you read in between the lines, it seems like this is really about donors getting real salty that they don't have enough access to Kamala Harris. I'll make my case in a minute, but let me give you what the allegations are. Harris's team is experiencing low morale, porous lines of communication, and diminished trust among aides and senior officials. Much of the frustration internally is directed at Tina Flournoy, Harris's chief of staff, a veteran of Democratic politics who began working for her earlier this year. So what are they alleging about Flournoy and what she's doing within this office? Well, aides and allies said that she, in an apparent effort to protect Harris, has instead created an insular environment where ideas are ignored or met with harsh dismissals and decisions are dragged out. Often, they said, she refuses to take responsibility for delicate issues and blames staffers for the negative results that ensue. I encourage you all to read the entirety of this Politico piece if you want to, I guess, fact check what I'm about to say. There was really nothing specific noted in this at all. Not a single staffer identified who he or she was. They're all anonymous. And the only specific thing that stood out to me was this frustration over a donor who wanted to get into contact with Kamala Harris, but apparently Flournoy didn't bend over backwards to make it happen. She's protective of the vice president's time because the vice president, I would assume, is busy and shouldn't have her schedule completely full of donors and whoever else wants to come in and influence her. So recently, a Harris friend personally reached out to Flournoy on behalf of one of the party's top donors to try to arrange a brief meeting. They were ignored. The friend said it was clear, it wasn't clear whether Flournoy knew who they were.
Wow, do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Okay.
The donor also contacted Harris's office personally to connect and didn't hear back for weeks. They eventually were told the VP was too busy to schedule some time. Now, this is the relevant quote. This is the only quote, in my opinion, that matters in the piece that totally discredits these ridiculous allegations. This is someone who has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions even, for your boss, and you're just blowing them off, the Harris friend asked. Next time Kamala wants them for something, it's like, hey, I couldn't even get a call back from your chief of staff. That's what this is about.
Yes, that's why they went to Politico. Politico is where you go to leak how disgruntled you are if you're a donor. And so now, but let's do nuances we always do, right? So there's one thing in the story that rang true, which was that apparently the office is disorganized, and everything that Kamala Harris has run, unfortunately, has been, according to former staffers, disorganized, including her presidential campaign. I told you guys the establishment always wanted her, and it was basically proven true when she was picked as vice president. The donors demanded Kamala Harris, and they got Kamala Harris, even though Biden was mad at her for challenging him. And she was the one who most aggressively challenged Biden. She got the VP position anyway, because the donors absolutely positively wanted it, okay? And so, but she bungled the presidential race so badly, she couldn't win the top spot. She was a shoo-in for the top spot, and she didn't get it. Instead, they had to panic and go, I guess Biden, whatever, Biden. But we'll put Kamala as VP, et cetera. So, okay, that rings true. But guys, when you read these articles, understand the subtext. Why was it leaked? Who was it leaked by? And what is their point? Anna's right, the quote she read you is pretty much the only gotcha quote in the whole article.
It's the only,
and that's not a gotcha.
Thing. Yeah, exactly. It's the only specific quote. Right, everything else is vague. Like it is a toxic environment where people have ideas that are ignored. Okay, can you give me an example of a specific idea that a staffer had that was ignored? And also, what's the role of this particular staffer? Because listen, I mean, we have production meetings every day. People pitch stories that I don't think makes sense for the show on that given day. Does that mean that we have a toxic work environment? No, we're collaborating, we're sharing ideas, whatever works we go with, whatever doesn't work we don't go with. And also there are different levels of management, it's just, there was nothing specific that made it appear as though either Flournoy or Kamala Harris were doing something that was like anti-staffer, anti-worker, abusive, toxic. There was nothing specific here.
Nothing. Okay, I'll give you the one example they had, and it was comical, right? So they said, well, Kamala Harris went to the border and she wasn't going to go to the border, but then apparently the top level staffers made a decision and didn't tell the rest of us, and then she went. Yeah, because they're the top level staffers. Well, what are we talking about, guys? I mean, forget us. We're small, well, not so small, talk show and network, etc. That's the Vice President of the United States. Yeah. She had to ask the interns permission to go to the border? Or what kind of insane conversation are we having?
And let's be fair, they're not interns, they're staffers, but it's.
It doesn't matter. It's the Vice President's office. There's so many layers of staffers. You're going to go to ask a mid-level or a low-level staffer for permission for what the Vice President's going to do? That's insane. Look, guys, we criticize Kamala Harris all the time, and people get confused. They're like, "Which side are you on?" We're not on anyone's side. We just tell you what's true and not true, right? So when Kamala Harris takes tons of money from the donors, we hate it, and we tell you that. And then K-Hive gets mad. Oh, don't say it. Oh, it's totally true. Don't say it though, okay? And so now in this case, she's ignoring the donors. That's actually the best story I've ever heard about Kamala Harris.
Totally, right? Yes.
So give her credit where credit is due, right? Now, in terms of the other things that were mentioned that were vague, they're like, the environment in the office seems dour. Oh my God, were you not cheery the whole time?
It happens sometimes,
Yeah,
it's called life.
It's called life, and it's called the pressure cooker of Washington, and you're at the Vice President's office. And so, yeah, sometimes things get chippy. And by the way, look at the-
Chippy.
I know, right?
I like that, okay.
Yeah, and look at the assumption of the donor. Oh, the next time you want something, in other words, money, I might not take your call. In other words, I gave you the money so you take my call and do whatever I told you to do. That assumption is so built in that they feel comfortable telling Politico that, and Politico feels comfortable putting it forward as a criticism of Kamala Harris.
Imagine printing this. No, that's the other thing. Imagine getting anonymous staffers, they don't give you anything specific, and the only semi-specific thing is this anonymous donor is upset that he or she didn't have direct access to Kamala Harris.
I would write that story, and I would write a story that saying—
You'd frame it differently, right?
Exactly, I'd say Kamala Harris ignoring donors, apparently doing the work of the people, right? Politico's like, can you believe it? It's an outrage that she's ignoring the beloved donors that might have even given millions of dollars. We're so dour about this. Last thing, just because it's fun. They're like, the chief of staff, and mind you, look, not a fan of Kamala Harris. Tina Flournoy worked with the Clintons, not a fan of her. Not a fan of Meghan McCain, which we showed you in the beginning, who we agree with in this story. But we're fair and honest, right? They're like, the chief of staff is acting like a gatekeeper. Yeah, that's her job. That's literally her job. So, some rando walked off the street. Oh, there's no gatekeeper, walk on in, that's the Vice President. It doesn't work that way. Her job is to figure out who should have the meetings and who shouldn't. If she's focusing on policy, credit where credit is due. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.